Welcome to Becoming Invaluable. I'm Dr. Terry Lyles, Steve Bowen, my co-author. We have a special guest today that you're going to love, John Hardy, and we're going to let Steve kind of introduce him because Steve and I kind of went through this process of I know people, you know people. So we have 9 chapters. So we tried to put our best people in the chapters, and John is in chapter 8. So I'm going to let Steve kind of share what that is, but you can find us on becominginvaluable.com. And we're excited to be able to share John's story with you today on this podcast. So, Steve, take it away. Introduce your buddy, John.
All right. Thank you, Terry. It's really good to have you here on the podcast. Thank you for joining us. And
thanks, Steve.
So I just want to tell the audience a little bit how I know you, and that is because John is actually my daughter-in-law, married to my oldest son, Grant. Jessica and I met John when we had the bachelor party. I actually met him a couple of times before that, but we actually had time together at Grant's bachelor party. We had to drive 3 hours to get there. So
we can't talk about the bachelor party. So just talk about the bachelor.
John and I had some great conversation in the car. And I have to say, John, your story has stuck with me ever since that day. And that's why we came to you, and we so appreciate you sharing your story with us and in the book. But today you have kind of a firsthand opportunity to share your story. So we'd love for you to give a little bit of intro background to yourself and share that with our audience. And Terry and I will have some questions along the way. And by the way, everybody, John is known as 210. So every of the 9 people, we're giving them all a tattoo. We have 48 and 210. And,
right.
So we're giving out tattoos for those pages. And so, John, you are now known as 210.
That's your page number. So all you have to do is hand it to your wife and your people and go, I'm 210. Read, start here, and then the rest of it just read.
So, John, tell us a little bit about yourself. Welcome to the show, and please share a little bit of your story.
It's actually funny that you said 210, because when I've been reading the book, I've gotten about halfway through it, but every time someone walks in my office, I hand them the book and I go, check out page 210. Check out page 210. So that is kind of funny.
This is why we do this. Yeah, this is why we do it, because everybody's gonna be like, look, I'm on page 210. Start there and then go from there, because it is what it is.
And then read the book. Yeah.
And then read the book. But that's good, John, because we really put you in this chapter near the end of the book for a very good reason, because your story ties directly into what's in this chapter. It's obviously built on the whole book, but what's in this chapter. And so it just is, fun to talk about. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about how you went about your life.
Wow. I mean, seeing where you are right now, you really have to take a good look at where you've been. And, I like to think, like, I haven't been one person. I've had to change who I am multiple times, throughout my life. Whether it's being a kid, having to be that tough kid in the projects, having to fight all the time, to, playing sports, had to like put in that extra work and, having to outwork everybody else around me, or, getting into the military and just wanting to be the best soldier, taking all the advanced courses, going airborne, doing all these, volunteering for everything to better my career, so I've always changed who I had to be based on, what I was doing at the time. After my injury, then I had to get out of the military. At that point, I just didn't know, who am I going to be now? Because who I wanted to be was that soldier. I wanted to be a career soldier. So now I had to figure out, who can I be? But, this is everything I've worked my whole life to be, and when I say my whole life, I was, in my 20s. So now I know that was a small fraction of my life, but at the time, that's everything to you, so, and then eventually going through some struggles, meeting my wife, really who I I know who I want to be now. I want to be a good father. I want to be a good person. I want to teach my kids, to be good and to help others and you know, to not have those struggles that I have. Of course, they're going to have their own struggles in life. But if I can guide them through some of the things that I had to deal with personally, and now they don't have to deal with it, or at least they have the tools to deal with it better than I did,
right.
then I feel successful. Business wise, then that's a whole nother story.
John,
I started this
before you go to the business side, because that's a really interesting story in and of itself. I would like to go back to that transition. That's what we tend to call them. We call them transitions. That transition after your injury in the military that forced you to have to exit. How long of a period of time was that? Was it a week or two? Was it a few years? How long of a period of time was that? Tell us a little bit about that, because that's, we all have our challenges, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it was a couple of years. I had a year of just surgeries, recovering, a lot of emotional stuff, like why me, that whole self, why this happened to me, why am I here, why are other people not here, you know what's meant for me, why am I going through this, what did I do to deserve this, um so it was a long period of doing that. And during that time, I went through a lot of struggles. I was drinking a lot. I was acting out. You know, I did not want to. Let's say I didn't want to listen to anybody.
Okay.
I didn't want to follow by the rules. You know, I felt like I cheated death and nothing could get me. Like I was just gonna. I didn't have a care. If something happened to me, I had no worries. I had nothing to look forward to. I didn't have kids. I didn't have, someone I cared about. At least I didn't think I did. So I had really nothing to keep me grounded at that point. It was just, I'll do whatever I want and deal with the consequences later.
So what triggered, and Terry, I'll let you lean in here too, and take us forward, but just what was the, a couple at the end of that couple of years, what kind of triggered a transition into whatever else it was? Was it your wife?
Honestly, it was my wife. It was my wife. And I know it's always the wife. A lot of people. Yeah. We've had a bunch of near misses over the years. She, like, this time around, she was a CNA at the hospital, and she took care of me, and but we didn't get together at that point. I had tried when I used to come home from the military. I was kind of wild. I'd throw parties at my house, home on leave. And she went to the same school. She was a few years younger than me, three grades behind me. So I never paid her attention. But, moving forward, I found out, she knew who I was. I really didn't know who she was. I guess I tried to hit on her a few times, and she rejected me because, I was a player at the time, and she didn't want to fall for my BS. But then because she knew my reputation, she knew who I was at that point. She said she got to know me better at the hospital, and when she was helping take care of me, because she's seen a vulnerable side of me. She didn't see that cocky teenager who thought he could do anything. She's seen my weaker side, what I thought was my weaker side. So it opened up another door for her to look at me a different way. And honestly, she didn't really care to date me or, really talk to me that way until one day she had my oldest son at a bus stop. She lived in a shelter at the time because she had lived with her mother. Her mother, told her she had to move out. She had a baby that was just a couple months old. So she was living at a shelter at a church in Somerville. And I seen her at the bus stop, and it was raining. I didn't know it was the day before her birthday, but it was the day before her birthday. And she was heading back to the shelter. And I just seen her, knowing her, she took care of me. She's got a little baby carriage. I pulled over and I gave them a ride. It was probably the first time I really didn't try to hit on her, because she was a pretty girl. So, my natural instinct was always to hit on the pretty girl. So it's the first time I didn't try to hit on her. And I think that's really what started our friendship, which grew into, what it is today. So, so really, she saved my life because I was going down a path where, I was destructive. She gave me some purpose. And then, Kevin, he was only a couple months old when I came into his life. And honestly, I think I fell in love with that kid before I fell in love with Teresa. Just, he's learning everything for the first time. And I was part of that, teaching him. It just felt like, wow, this is cool. I'm teaching someone everything they're going to ever know for the first time. Like, I'm showing them these things. So that made a big impact on me.
Would you say that gave you some purpose in life?
Yeah.
It started to. Yes, it really started.
Sorry, Terry.
It really
no, I was going to say, so that part of this chapter at the end of the book is about Goya, and it's an acronym that we use, and it's get off your ass. So it's basically, what did you do, or what did someone do? You just described some of that you just do what you do, because if not, you just meander along, and you just go through life. But at some point you have a Goya moment, or moments, where you say, I have to do this. And you said she's part of that. From there forward, how did you, in your story, which we're not going to share because people are going to have to buy the book and read it, but part of that is, how do you Goya becoming who you are from who you were at that point?
As Teresa and I, as our relationship grew, I knew I wanted this to be a big part of my life. And in order to do that, the city I was living in, and the people that I was around, and just the whole environment, it wasn't a good. I didn't want to raise a kid in this environment. Well, Teresa, eventually, we got married. She was pregnant with my other son, Johnny, at the time. And I knew we had to get out of the city. We had to move somewhere nicer. I had to I wanted these kids to have something. I just wanted to do something more for them. I didn't want them to have to see me out there fighting and struggling and doing all that. One of the things I did is I went into there was a homeless veteran shelter in Boston at the time, and I didn't go to live there, but I took a CDL course. They used to give classes there for veterans. So I took my CDL license there. I went to class. It was like 3 months to get my truck driver's license. So, I wanted to have a skill. Like, being a truck driver, I figured, hey, that's something easy. I can do that. I can make some decent money. I can help these kids, help Teresa. We can grow together. So I got my CDL license, and eventually we moved to Cape Cod. We moved out of the city to Cape Cod. And honestly, I didn't talk to people that I grew up with for about 20 years. I was down here. We kind of just changed our whole lifestyle. I've recently been in contact with some of the people I grew up with, and, we've had them down. And one of my friends, he came to the football meeting. I'm the president for, the high school football program. And I'm giving a speech to all these kids and talking in front of teachers and coaches. And he's in the back looking at me. He goes, hey, John, what's the scam here? What's the edge? Like, is there something going on? Like, this isn't you. Like, how are you profiting here? I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, you got these people fooled, but you don't have me fooled. And it took about a year for him to say, wow, you really are different. You really have changed, So, there's a whole bunch of little things that go into, how I changed.
And that's Steve, that's why this book, Becoming Invaluable, is really what it's about. Like, how do you transcend yourself to be best self? Like, how do you get there? That it's not just about money. It's not just about the next deal. Sometimes it's just about being you and enhancing society. And Steve, you and I talk about that a lot in the book, in the other 8 chapters. And John just happened to be a part of that chapter in 9, or 8 rather, that we go into 9, talking about how do you finalize that process?
Well, I would just like to add, Terry, that, I don't know if that process is ever final because we seem to always come to new transitions in life. But John,
Right.
thank you for sharing that. First of all, that's just, from that life of, I don't know what the right term is, but kind of, partially supported life in a not so great neighborhood, to what you've done today. Take us forward. I want the people to hear. I mean, they just heard the real story about you. Tell them what you've done in the last 25 years, though, because you've
Right.
just done amazing things by giving back to people, and that, I think, includes not only the high school but the business and your children and your wife. But talk to us a little bit about that business too, because you built quite a great business.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, like, well, being down here on the Cape, I find a lot of enjoyment is coaching kids. So I coach every sport I can. I coach football. Hockey's been my favorite, but I don't have a kid that plays hockey right now, so I'm kind of in limbo with the hockey. I love hockey, coaching baseball, American Legion. I'm the past commander of American Legion. I'm on the board of trustees for the VFW in Hyannis. So I do a lot of volunteer work with that.
Yeah. There's a little boxing
being
too from that competitive spirit, I think, huh?
The boxing has become my passion right now. My youngest son, Thomas, he's 14. Last year, he won the New England Silver Gloves. He just won last weekend New England Silver Gloves at 14. Next week, we go up to New York so he can compete on the regional. Hopefully, he gets the W there, and then we go on to a national. So I've really been learning how to train. Like, I've been around boxing for a long time, being a fighter, but now I'm learning how to train boxers the right way. And I have a good mentor with that. This guy, Jesse, he's a pro fighter. He's the one training my son. I don't train him. I'm just in the gym learning from him. And I'll do stuff with a bunch of the other guys that are, newer to boxing, teaching them. You know what? It's just seeing somebody learning something and me being able to give them. It feels good. I go home after working with someone and I feel good about myself. It just gives me something to look forward to for the next day. So the volunteer work, I love. And the fact that my son Thomas is now volunteering with this group, People of Action. It's a group of people in Hyannis that do community outreach. They work with the police department, with the lower income community, bringing them together. And we do a few like unity days and just a few community action stuff. Last week we did a skating at the rink, doing toys for tots, and we had hundreds of people show up. Our state rep showed up. It was fun. But seeing my son help with that, he's volunteering his time. He's 14 years old. So that's kind of what I love to do right now. My business, starting my business, it was on a whim. It was because I didn't want to work for somebody else anymore. I felt like I wasn't appreciated there.
You took that driving license though to get your first job in the very business you're in, right? So tell us, just
actually
know the business. Yeah.
Actually, no. My first job with my CDL license, I was a bus driver. I drove from Cape Cod to Logan Airport twice a day. I did the commuter trip for a bus company, and I did that for about a year and a half. I didn't like it. I didn't like sitting in traffic in Boston, and so I eventually went with a moving company that, I kind of learned this industry about moving and storage and, transporting to other states and how the licensing and all that worked. And just learning all that, I knew I was doing it for someone else. I could do this for myself, So eventually I started my business.
Yeah.
And it's grown. It's grown every single year. We've never had a setback. Here we are right after Christmas, and, we have 5 jobs today. We have 5 moves today alone. I have 14 guys out working right now, that we're keeping busy a couple of days after Christmas when, we're like the only ones on the streets out here.
Right. But you built a couple of other businesses adjacent to that too, right?
Yeah, my storage has been is a big, you know, is really big for us. The real estate stuff, we're flipping houses. Me and my other son Michael, you know, we flipped a couple houses with that. That's really I when I step away from the moving, I think the two things I'm going to be really focused on is the real estate and the boxing gym.
Yeah.
You know, having our own boxing gym. Those will be my two, you know, main focuses. And I only got 3 years left in this business. And my son Johnny will be taking it over. Yeah, we have it. We have an agreement.
You've set a goal.
Yeah,
with
we have an exit.
Your oldest son?
My son Johnny, who's the second, my second son.
Johnny. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, Kevin doesn't want the business aspect. My oldest. He's more he's easygoing. He's, Dad, give me a truck, give me a good crew. I like people. I'll move someone different every day. You know, just I don't want to be responsible for, you know, making sure, because he sees me struggle with, hey, I want to make sure my guys have hours. I'm helping two of my employees right now buy houses for the first time. You know, we're helping set them up into with building their credit and, you know, teaching them about owning a house. Like, hey, why are you renting? And I'm trying to work them into that. And we've already helped a few other employees do that. But, you know, helping these two guys, Kevin sees me, you know, always worried about, you know, my employees, not worried about myself. He's like, Dad, I don't want to be that guy. That's not him.
Wow.
And I think a big part of that is resiliency, which we have in this chapter, which is so important. Like the ability to just keep going and going, bouncing back and bouncing back. So as we finalize, what are some of you think your biggest learnings from bouncing back from something that you've not already mentioned to be able to build forward to bouncing back is like the foundation of how to go higher. It's like a trampoline. What does that look like?
And the business side of it, we did have a big, I had to bounce back. I don't know if you mentioned, if we talked before, I had a business partner when I first started. I think we talked about that in our initial conversation.
Yes, we did.
And I won't even mention his name because we ended not on good terms. But he was with me for a year. He helped me start the business. He was my partner. And he went through some bad times in his life at that beginning stages. And I didn't see it coming. Eventually it hit us when I started seeing the credit cards he was using, you know, the company cards to buy stuff he shouldn't have been buying. He took one of my trucks, you know, he ended up in Florida, you know, and I had to fly down there, get the truck. And he wasn't doing the right thing. He left me in pretty good debt. I knew his father very well, and we, you know, we sat down and we came to an agreement that I basically wasn't going to press charges on him for stealing money from the business, and he signed over the whole business to me. You know, and my wife at the time, she was, you know, is this really smart? Because should you just close it up and start from scratch on your own? But I had already established the name recognition, and you know, we were already building. You know, so I was already out networking and building the business. And I said, no, I'll take the loss in money right now and we'll build it back. There'll be more money. I'll make the money. But we started off in debt. You know, after that first year, I was in the hole pretty bad. We almost lost our house that we had just bought. You know, so I had to really dig in and eat a lot of ramen soup and you know, and get to work.
Yeah, we've all eaten ramen
at the beginning.
Yeah, we've all eaten ramen, whether it was college or business. It's all the same. It's just trying to get to another place. So, Steve, any final questions you might have or comments with John?
I just want to say, you know, John, that's just, you know, again, the combination of the personal place you came from, going through that in business, the how you give back to people. One of the things that we tried to make clear in this book, this isn't just about somebody who's in business. This is about how do you become invaluable in life, right? So becoming invaluable is all about, you know, whether you want to apply leadership and call it servant leadership, or you want to apply just people and the way you give to people, give to your sons, your surrounding community, you know, the high school. I mean, that's just awesome. And I think what you've done. And so I would just ask in closing, if you were gonna if you were gonna say one thing to somebody out there who might be struggling right now, what might you say to them?
Keep fighting. Keep fighting. You know, it's easier to give up. When you fight, you know, something good can happen on the other end, but you're never going to get there if you give up. You know, that's kind of one of the lessons I teach my kids.
Yeah, that's so fitting because, you know, as you know, we have 9 different people in the book. You're one of those 9. To our amazement, every single person during our longer interview discussion for the book, every single person said, well, you know, yeah, I kept doing that because failure's not an option.
Right.
Yep.
And that's what you're really saying. Keep fighting. Failure's not an option, right?
Hey, you
Never.
stay in the ring.
Correct.
You stay in the ring for one last punch. Maybe it's a knockout. Maybe the time went off and the judges will decide. But a knockout is always better because you don't have to explain somebody lying on the mat. But you got to stay in the ring long enough. So, to your example of boxing, those are knockouts.
You got to outlast them. Yeah.
All I can say, John, as we close off here, just please feel free to mention the name of your company. I think it's on your shirt there. The name of your company or companies and how they might find you and what your business is.
Yep. My main business, Compass Moving and Storage. We're located South Dennis, Mass, on Cape Cod. Website is compassmovinginc.com.
Nice.
Right. Excellent. And you move people back up and down the East Coast all the time now, right?
We do a lot of East Coast moves from Maine to Florida. You know, we go out west a lot. Our main corridor is that East Coast, but you know, a lot of Massachusetts, all over Massachusetts moves. You know, and a lot of storage. We have a lot of storage. We have over 20,000 square feet storage right now.
Nice. Well, John, thank you for being a part of our book. You know, your tattoo, you know, you're going to get at some point on a shirt. You don't have to put it on your body necessarily, but whatever. But that's what you hand it out to when you hand people the book and say, hey, this is my tattoo. You know what I mean? So 210. And thank you for being a part of our book, for being friends to Becoming Invaluable. People can find us at becominginvaluable.com. And Steve, thank you for your, positioning in this and working with me on this, and you with me. And John, thank you for being a guest today on Becoming Invaluable.
Yeah. Take care, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey, you, Steve. Thanks, Terry.
You're welcome.